So tonight again we have our exclusive guest Anima Noira, excellent witch, medium and psychic, and we will talk about extremely controversial subject which is MK Ultra on the territory of the ex-Soviet republics and the similar programs which happened there. So thank you for joining us tonight and I hope you will enjoy the show. So Nora, what is like your opinion and description of MK Ultra in the Soviet Union? What is exactly
Well,
entailed within that?
somewhat to my surprise, and I guess I feel a bit stupid that it didn't dawn on me, the same programs which are rumored to have existed in the West, they of course existed in the East as well, behind the Iron Curtain. And they actually came from the exact same sources. You know, the intelligence and these technologies were shared. They were actually shared, like actively. All the secret services have collaborated throughout the Cold War era, and they kind of split the spoils of World War II. You know, they took all the technology from the Nazi empire and took the scientists. There is certainly no solid argument to defend the position that this evil was just happening in the West, and in the Soviet Empire everything was just nice and cozy, and they would never do those things. Of course, they would do those exact same things. That's what the whole Cold War was about.
Okay, so you mentioned something earlier which I think will be interesting to our viewers. So you mentioned that somebody really close in your environment was involved in that. So can you talk more about who it was or how you knew that person or what exactly happened, if you can, of course.
It's just my record of my own memories. I have doubts about them. They have resurfaced in my 30s, not before. Which, however, is how this phenomenon is being described, that it's sealed off in like a compartment of your brain. And then when the programming starts falling apart, you rediscover these memories. And by the time, of course, so much time has passed that there is no way to verify it. But if my recollection has any value, then it was actually generational. And my family from my father's side, which came from northern Bohemia, was targeted for programs of government experimentation, sometimes in the 1950s. And the communists took the files from the Nazis. The Nazis had pretty precise records of like births, different health data. I don't know why my father's bloodline was made to be a part of it. I don't think they were ever fully aware what's going on. The only thing that I perceived from this for years was just this darkness, this devastation, a lot of mental illness, alcoholism, suicide, but it kind of seemed to be coming from nowhere, honestly, and that's what was puzzling me for years, because of course I went through all the studying trauma, like domestic violence, alcoholism, all those things I studied, but I still didn't see where does it even come from. And I believe that they were unfortunate victims of this experimentation, and then I was involved in it as well. At that time, the program was overtaken by the Western secret services, and that it was eventually phased out in the late 1990s, I guess, in favor of other technologies. So it would only have been happening until I was 11 or 13. And my siblings, who are younger than me, would not be really targeted for it, or it didn't go very far with them. So it was, I believe, done with the consent of my father, who was not necessarily blackmailed or coerced, but bribed into giving me into this, and kind of convinced my mother, or she was oblivious, or more or less oblivious. Something else was presented to her, but like he was the person facilitating this. He's the common denominator.
Okay. So, Danny, can you kind of take over from here a little bit?
Yeah. So you said some really interesting things just now. How did you connect the dots with what was going on with these programs with Eastern Europe and what was going on with other Western countries? I'm very curious about that.
I just always had a dark fascination with these subjects that I could not explain where that fascination was even coming from. I guess I was subconsciously looking for answers. But since I had no local sources, I only assumed that these things were happening in the West, like in the United States. There have been published memoirs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And then I was very suddenly hit by a wave of memories, which actually came through a channeling session in 2021 with Lucifer. He basically ordered me to face the repressed memories. I was aware at the time that my American husband was sold by a pedophile ring for child pornography. His great uncle was running a ring in Portland that he always remembered, like the whole family was kind of in on it. And Lucifer just said this one line through the medium, who was my husband. He said, "Nora, you have to stop running from this. You too have been sold, and I want you to remember." And then I started recovering gradually very particular memories that kind of painted a different story, a missing part of the story of my childhood that I never saw before. And it's a continuum from events that I am absolutely sure that have happened. I have processed them. Then it goes to other events which still seem very plausible to me. And then at some point, I'm just like kind of lost. I'm like, no, this is science fiction.
Dimitri, do you want me to continue, or do you have something to comment?
So, I am interested because what you're dropping in here is really interesting and profound. I was familiar with similar experiments on the territory of the ex-Soviet Union for a long time, involving parapsychological investigations in order to counter the military operations of the Western Bloc. But
how long of a time?
Czech Republic went to, and we gave those programs to the Americans. We had a very long-standing, successful line of paranormal research, but all the archives were taken by the CIA. We gave it to them, basically.
So for those of us that aren't familiar, can you guys tell us how long this goes back in history?
So essentially, as far as I am familiar, it all started after Stalin died. So while the old Stalin was alive, he kind of relied on nukes and tanks most of the time. But after Stalin died, serious efforts were invested into different forms of paranormal research, and the goal was mostly considered with the reconnaissance.
Okay, because so I'm guessing that was what? Did he die at early 50s or something like that?
No, it was from the 60s to the 90s. That was the period.
Okay.
Essentially. And it was really important because internet didn't exist back in the day, and you didn't have satellite imagery. So they used those different paranormal experiments, especially remote viewing, to compensate for the lack of information about the other side, because you had really closely guarded secrets and bunkers and everything. But I wanted to ask Nora, what was exactly the purpose of the operations she was participating in? Why was that done?
It was never fully completed. The whole program was dropped when I was sometime between 11 and 13 years of age. I think they were, so there's like 4 types of MK Ultra programming. I was deemed unsuitable for the assassin conditioning, so I didn't get any of that. I was given some programming for like general spy work, like delivering messages, information, and such. I was being like groomed or told that I will be either a journalist or a media person, like on the TV. And most of the programming went into the persona that was supposed to be an entertainer, like a prostitute, which is also known as kitten programming. That's where most of it went. And but the thing is, they didn't really have much use for us. The way I was used was actually, I was being lent out for these black masses, celebrity blackmail parties with pedophiliac enjoyment. That's the use that was there for me and the other children. I remember a few of these events, and then the programming sessions themselves. And I think then it was just like phased out, and like they messed me up one last time, put up this like wall for me to remember, and I never saw them again. But it influenced my life in major ways, which is what Lucifer said. He said, your childhood, Noira, has influenced you in much greater ways than you're admitting to yourself. And I tried to disprove it to me, especially once I saw the Black Mass scene, because I actually recognized the face of the priest. He's kind of famous in the country. So I just put it in Google, and to my absolute astonishment, I came up with a bunch of memes where people are pretty openly mocking him and ridiculing him for serving the Black Mass, even like listing the same place that I remember, being as a child. And
it's like an open secret kind of
yeah,
thing.
well, that's what shocked me the most. I was like, this is not what I was hoping to find. So like this shit has been going on for so long that it's basically an open secret, and people are making memes, or like mockery essays out of it, just describing the people who go there and what happens there. And that really shocked me, and I'm not sure that I like ever fully processed it. I have processed a lot. Like I was aware of incestuous episodes in my family. That was bad enough. I thought that was the bottom of it, and I didn't even like recall the incest until my mid-20s, my 30s. I thought that's where the rabbit hole ends, because honestly, it's like the worst betrayal on a child. But I didn't feel healed. Something, I guess, was still missing. And then I recovered more memories. I was like, okay, so how much worse can this get? I saw other men accompanying my father. So I was like, okay, this is bad. That like means that there was a group and it was organized, and they were our family friends. They were trusted friends. One of them was a teacher. They seemed to kind of be passing the kids along themselves, just like pedophile rings do. And the point where my memories end, the ones that I believe, that I stand by, is like I am led by my father and this other family friend to a old theater where that friend of our family actually worked, and there's like some other man there, and some kind of filming is going on, and I was given some drug that makes me feel very giddy, very sexual, like it lowers inhibition, and it's given to me as a reward. Like it's my reward jellies or bonbons, or it was used for conditioning. And I just like see these stage lights and I'm kind of melting, and I guess some things happen afterwards that I have no recollection of. But I believe strongly that this scene happened, and also being watched as I am being sexually used by my father, by his friends in our living room, that also happened. But it was not an entirely private or non-commercial pursuit for these people. There was some money changing hands. There was definitely some filming going on. That was, I believe, how we are being used. And then the parties.
So having known a few people that were, that came out of those programs as children, very few of them have, I don't actually think any of them have memories that are fully intact of what happened. When the memories do start to resurface, that's a really treacherous phase, because that's when people can just kind of like completely lose their minds, because they're really holding on to their sanity very tenuously, keeping those memories safely repressed. And so when they do come out, that can be it can be a little bit dangerous for the person. It seems like you are faring pretty well as far as like.
Well, I guess I'm just used to observing my mind, and like, to me, if this whole thing was proven true, that would be redemption, because it explains a lot of things about my life that I previously had no explanation for. But I'm very doubtful about the extent of these things. Like, the incest alone took me many years to fully recover the memory and process it, because it seems like fragmented. It's like you have a visual input, then you have like sound, then you feel something in the body, and then it's like flashing black and white, and it only comes together over time once you allow it. And I spent some time in therapy with like a court specialized sexologist, and she convinced me that my memories are legit, because she described the whole modus operandi, like how these things actually work, and that made me trust my memory. But after that Lucifer channeling, where I was told you two were being sold, that's when a whole nother rabbit hole opened. Like, I am positively certain about the memory where other men are present, but when you think it through, what else was going on? I am also fairly certain about the stage lights theater memory. And then I guess, what does that say? I was being given some pills that I was used to, that I knew what it did to me, that were given to me as a reward. So if I take this, to the full extent, then I guess everything that I remember is real. I just kind of can't wrap my head around it.
And there is something a little bit useful to this conversation which I can suggest. So there is a technique which Lilith gave me like 5 years ago, which involves feeding of the drama. So you visualize the aspects of the moment which traumatized you. In your case, it doesn't have to be the full thing, because you don't have the full thing in your mind, but you can focus on the aspects of it. And before you do the meditation, you call its energy in. Now, a really important part of that is you tell Lilith to merge with you before meditation starts, and it starts like flowing through your body like electricity. You don't go into a possession, but you go into like semi-possession, invocation, right? And then you focus on the traumatic moment. And after that is happening, you essentially focus on the energy of Lilith devouring the image of the moment in your mind. And Lilith within you, that energy within you will literally take the moment and devour it. And you will feel the energy coming from the moment into you, in a literal spiritual sense. And then after that is over, only darkness and emptiness will remain in your mind. And you have two options. One is to devour the emptiness, to kind of feed off the darkness, and another is to simply meditate in that peace, which will come after the aspects of drama are literally vampirically devoured. Vampirism can be used to devour your own memories. And what is really doing is it is essentially allowing you to see the world outside of the energetic imprint of the drama. So that's like the only thing I can say on this. I have my own set of experiences, but I don't believe those experiences were the product of some intelligent service. It simply happens to people. But I am not denying that your experiences were part of something organized. I'm just regarding me, it can happen differently, but fundamentally, uh, that's what essentially triggered my investigation with Lilith, because those things were haunting me and there was no immediate resolution within official psychological methodology to what I was experiencing. So I kind of used Lilith and the method she taught me to get over that and absorb that energy, and I really feel the emptiness beyond those impressions. So yeah, what do you think, Noira?
I think the audience will make use of it. I think your techniques are fantastic and straight from Lilith. It never occurred to me that you could use vampirism on memories. That's very original.
Okay, so I would let you two girls talk for a while, and that's not an issue.
Well, I just walked in here, so I'm not sure what you guys were talking about.
So we were talking about using spirits to devour memories. That was the thing.
Mm-hmm. Is that a technique that you've shared with Nora that she's tried, or?
No, he just shared it with everybody.
The technique I shared with you too. It's like a Lilith memory vampirization technique.
Well, are the memories really disturbing you, Nora, or do you want to be able to access more of them so that you can figure out more about what happened?
Actually, none of it. I haven't worked with this whole thing for 9 months maybe, and like nothing special happened. It didn't progress further. I didn't feel any need to go there. I just kind of took it and I put it on a shelf. Like, this is a hypothesis, and I guess time will tell where to file this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's interesting. It sounds like you're kind of just taking it as it comes in a way.
Yeah,
you're not trying to.
That's exactly it, because I was kind of introduced to it pretty randomly, through that Lucifer channeling. I still am not sure if these memories could be like implanted retroactively, if there is like time travel involved. I know that I have alien microchips, which could certainly produce different things. I don't know if like I exist in different versions of my past selves, and this is just my alternate self that has experienced those things, and then maybe the timeline separated. For me personally, this is the only truly paranormal part of my life that I don't know what to think of it. Everything else I stand behind. If I say that I knew Vlad Dracula or Alexander the Great, or that I've been to hell, yeah, I stand by it 100%. But the MK Ultra thing,
mm-hmm.
It's like outside of my realm of what I even believe, and that's very disconcerting, because so if it is true, that's disconcerting. But if those memories were somehow like implanted or downloaded into me, then maybe that's even worse, right? Because what does that mean? Like, what technology is doing this? Why? For what purpose?
I know exactly.
How is my patron deity involved in all of that? You know, it's like you have this dilemma between two evils. And I remember having this back when I recovered the incest memory. I was like, okay, so either this happened and that's really horrible, or it didn't happen. And then, I guess I'm just like crazy and I don't know where all of my problems are coming from, and that's possibly even worse. So for me, like, having the answers and the truth is definitely preferable, but I'm not certain if I will ever have it. I went through all of my medical records already years ago, looking for something because I knew that something was wrong. I was assuming that I could have been raped. I was specifically looking for, like, did I have like a venereal disease or abortion or like something, in my records that would prove that something was happening. I even had a professional doctor go over my records and we came up with nothing. Nothing. So where does that leave me? I remember a priest serving a black mass. The whole city is mocking him for allegedly doing it. He seemed to recognize me when I signed up for college. He was one of my college mentors. I remember two actors in particular on one of those shows who were like children actors, like they would be acting in fairy tales and programs for children, and that to me was like pretty disturbing. In other fragments, and so it was not actually traumatizing like in the classical sense, because I perceived all of these people as very professional, very orderly. Like, they didn't have anything against me. They would reward me even, or like praise me.
Yeah.
They radiated. They were like authority figures
that you trusted.
And so for me, actually, the worst part of all of this, and it's gonna sound, I guess, really surprising, but for me, the worst part of it was being abandoned. Like, it all stopped, and I never became this person that I was told that I will become. Like, I will be the actress, or like I will be in the TV. I will like do awesome things. But then it was this bandit. They just like messed me up. Told all of my split personalities that they're worthless, like to not remember anything. So they created all of this mechanism within me to be used for some special mission, some special task, and then it was never used. So I was left with this tremendous feeling of like cold and betrayal, and I never knew where it came from. I thought it came from my parents, but it didn't. Came from the program. Professional, business-like. They had like a military vibe, or like an old cop. They didn't care, but they also didn't really have any personal motive to hurt me. It was just all about this purpose, this mission, this operation, which eventually never happened, or is it happening, actually?
I want to ask 2 or 3 questions here. So there is one question I would like to ask, which really concerned me in this entire. So how that memory came about, how that channeling triggered those memories, what exactly happened?
Well, what happened was we were lying in bed in our temple. I was using my husband as a medium. We would speak to Lucifer this way every day, nightly, and Lucifer basically stated, Noira, you have been sold too. And I want you to remember, this is your task now, and your childhood has influenced you much more than you realize. he said influenced, but it was another word. It implied programmed almost. So, I went to the couch the next day. I just laid there. I was like, okay, whatever comes up, comes up. And I saw the molestation scene where other men are present, family, friends. And then the movie theater scene where some kind of filming is going on. There are other people present and I'm being given these pills. Felt like ecstasy. I also remembered being brought at like 5 years old by my father to some kind of spiritualist retreat. Children had no business of being there, but he took me there because he didn't care. Because he actually used me to cover up for his affairs. Like my mother would never expect that he would engage in affairs while babysitting their daughter. So he kind of used me as his own cover. And they gave me something like I don't know if it was like shrooms or whatever. Definitely not supposed to give that to a child, but somebody did. And then this weird cult worship scene ends up happening where everybody's like dancing around me in a circle, and then like I'm a goddess or whatever, and then they like tore down clothes from me. Yeah, everybody wakes up after a while, and I have physical marks on me. It's like visible that something happened, and that's a problem that needs to be covered up. So, like I see my father talking to this woman who gave me that thing to drink, and they come up with some kind of coordinated story as to why this happened. But that was not a part of the programming. That was just the stuff that, he engaged in as a private person. But it did explain to me why I hated alcohol and drugs so much, because it was forced on me as a child. I was also given alcohol, when the molestation happened, and I had like a very visceral reaction. I had a lot of very physical reactions, adverse reactions to kissing as an adult. And I think it comes from like what was done to me, and I had alcohol forced on me. When I started drinking like socially at 16, when everybody else did, I was crazy dissociating. From like a glass of wine, I would feel like I'm hearing voices, everything is far away from me, like I'm floating. I could barely contain myself with very little alcohol. I had no idea where it's coming from, but I think it was that and the programming. My body just associated these substances with total loss of will and, like being coerced into altered states of mind. And that's why I was like a religiously straight edge for most of my life, because I was like scared of it.
Okay, so, to return to the question from the beginning, what do you think was the goal of that? Like, what they were actually trying to do?
So the goal essentially was just to have us available for any task that is needed, and for each of us to be programmed with the program that was most suitable with our natural talents. And I was deemed to be most suitable for like the kitten, the sexual entertainer thing. That would make me, I guess, like a mistress, to be infiltrated close to people of importance. I guess I was deemed likable or charismatic. It's so funny because, like, what did I eventually become? I'm a YouTube show host. That's what they were telling me that I will become. Like a TV anchor or a model, actress. Like, I think that's what Lucifer was trying to tell me. Like, you became that which you were programmed to become. You did not escape it. It's happening, and I guess in a metaphysical sense, like I am the agent still. I'm just at least not consciously aware of being part of any government program. but the programming itself exists in me. I don't know like what triggers it anymore, what uses it. I'm like an abandoned creation of someone.
So essentially, you said, because you are like from Czechia, right? And you said that you were kind of abused by somebody relatively famous. Can you give us some names here so we can like do the rabbit hole research ourselves?
Oh,
Because like
you can look up Tomáš Halík. He's a very famous, internationally published Catholic priest, philosopher. And he's the person that I remember being there doing it.
okay, and like can you like describe, I mean, asking you to describe anything for the sake of the show. I mean, I understand that you don't want to do that, of course. But if you could describe anything of the scenery, anything of the people,
Yeah.
anything of the atmosphere.
So the first memory appears to be happening in a small theater in the historic center of Prague with wooden floors. And the only part of it that I remember is when I'm being prepared to act in some kind of ritual theater drama. It's more of a show that people watch. They don't like partake actively. And I'm some kind of sacrifice because I end up like lying in some pentagram almost on the floor. I can't move my legs. There's some kind of conditioning that just like makes me very stiff and I'm fully dissociated. I don't know what's happening there. What are they doing to me? I have not seen that. But I remember the people, the men gathering, and they're actually wearing some kind of hood over their civilian clothing. And there is these two actors, male actors, who are known to me from like children's shows. That kind of creeps me out. And then there is like another man who is responsible for me that I perform this role correctly. Chronologically, somewhere around this memory is my mother crying in a winter coat, and my father is like lying to her and consoling her that like everything is okay. It's like she's afraid to not have me around, but he tells her something and then she's okay with it. So she doesn't know what's going on, but obviously she trusts him enough to leave me with him all the time, and dubious stuff happens when I'm alone with my father. That much is certain. Then the other memory appears to be in a church. It's also in the center of Prague. 1960s beautiful Baroque building, and this is more of like a religious occult ceremony, like more participatory, I would say, and there's multiple children, like pretty young, like not babies, but everybody can like walk and talk, but everybody's preschool. And there's definitely like different sex acts happening, and like a pedophiliac sacrament that these people partake in ritualistically. I actually don't see myself or what's happening to me, but I like remember just this kid, like being seated on this like altar by the priest. There's about 5 of us. They didn't really have much use for us. Like the pornography and these parties, were the only thing that we were used for. So that's, I think, why the whole thing was eventually shut down. My personal feeling is that some new technology was discovered that just like made MK Ultra obsolete. Because now you got like satellites and electromagnetic weapons and whatnot. This was all based on behaviorism and creating split personalities through trauma and programming them. But I guess it has too much side effects. It was consuming their resources. So at the end, they just like sealed it all, messed me up one last time. So they like told me that I was worthless, that I was not good enough to, be involved in this great thing. They ruined my self-worth. And that, of course, had implications for my life. I was so full of self-hatred that I guess you will find it hard to believe, but I could not stand being photographed for many years. I thought that I was so hideous, so ugly that I like didn't. I would run away if people were taking photographs until I was like 25. I guess that's I.
Does your I'm assuming you've done some research. I mean, I can tell you've done some research. Does any of your research, as far as what you can sort of find in history, does that help you put any of those pieces together?
Well, it all paints a singular picture that very much fits what others have described. And that's the scary part. Like, none of this deviates from what everybody else is saying. I had a therapist who was trained in treating these victims, and she found a lot of, similarities as well. I just quit the therapy last year because I felt like I was going around in circles, and had better things to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not sure if this whole recovering of those memories is like good for me. I actually suspected, and I still do suspect, that it's some kind of alien technology trying to alter my past, essentially. Or that my past actually exists in multiple versions. Because this is not the weirdest thing in my life. I remember being assassinated twice, and then time was rolled back and wiped out, and those events no longer exist. But they would have existed on the timeline where I was still involved in the secret program. That's the only way how I would even become interesting enough to be a target. So there's something really weird going on with my past, and it goes beyond MK Ultra.
Yeah.
And it's the freaking rabbit hole. Like, Curtis Joseph told me it has become almost acceptable, almost fashionable these days to be an occultist. But once you start talking about aliens, that's where you're weird. Mm-hmm. I guess MK Ultra has entered the public mind enough that you can talk about it and not be deemed crazy. But when you take these things further, I have experienced so much Mandela effect in the last month that it blows my freaking mind. I had seen history change several times. Lucifer told me that he is changing the past. He is an interstellar, interdimensional, interplanetary deity, apparently making deals with the extraterrestrial civilizations who are in touch with me too. They all I have several microchips in me, in my hand, behind the ear. I'm trademarked as some kind of special design. This is the only way that I can describe what I know. I don't know how exactly it all blends together. I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
And I'm super grateful that you guys are so open, that you're putting this content out there, which really goes beyond what people think or what anybody is willing to present.
Yeah, well, it's my stories are as real as it gets, but it's certainly always awkward to talk about.
And
It
that's we have
sounds outlandish for sure.
we have YouTube so that we can tell each other our stories, regardless of if we remember, regardless of if it's even true or some kind of propaganda that was
Yeah.
implanted in our minds. We are free to associate and
Well,
share.
yeah. I mean, my memories are not repressed or recovered memories. They're, you know, plain light of day, in your face, crisp memories, you know. And when I was in the middle of all that MK shit, I was like out in the middle of the desert. Like there was nothing there. It was summertime in southern Arizona. It was like 120 degrees out. And every day I would see this thing walking around the property, which was like the size of a block. And it would just like walk around and around and around. And I would see this big floppy white hat bobbing over the top of the fence. And I was just like, what? Who is this person that's like walking around when it's 120 degrees? I know how fast like you can get heat stroke. Anyway, one day I was out in the front like getting mail out of the mailbox, and I saw the thing with the floppy white hat, and it didn't look human at all. It walked right past me. It was about 4.5 feet tall. It was very unnaturally thin. And when it saw me, it pulled down the hat to cover its face, which it didn't have. It didn't have a face. The thing didn't have a face, and it covered it up to hide the fact that it didn't have a face.
Yeah, I've heard stories like this, and I also have heard people who were a part of the so-called Super Soldier program, which definitely included like missions in outer space, and then apparently being like time regressed back to their original timeline. It's crazy. Time travel technology is definitely out there.
Yeah, and then when the I guess the forces or entities or whatever it is that are part of MKUltra, when they were kind of like harassing me when I was coming against it, when I was like trying to free this person that was like a slave of it, one of the things that they did was like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like they would play a recording of time backwards to me, like almost like a VHS tape or something. I don't know how to. It's really weird. It's totally weird, Val.
But the memories that I have of being programmed, they are actually quite similar to what you can see in the movie, like the Clockwork Orange. It's always some very impersonal, undecorated space. I'm like on a table. There's strange instruments, sensory deprivation. I don't really remember like being subjected to like torture, like painful stuff, but like shaking, drugs every time. Oh, drugs were used so much on me. I guess that's why I don't like them.
Yeah. The first time I saw a UFO, well, my first boyfriend told me that he was being abducted and tortured, and I was just kind of like, okay, well, I'm open to what you have to say. I can't really fully subscribe to it because it didn't happen to me. It wasn't my experience. But when I was at his house, I saw for the first time a UFO. And it was glorious. It was like this bright green crescent-shaped craft, and it was just hovering in front of us for perfectly stationary in the sky. and then it took off horizontally, and it went so fast that it just vanished. It was like, faster. It went from stationary to like faster than the speed of light. And I was just like, oh shit, like.
And
Okay.
there is records of occultists out there who have been observed by UFOs in ritual.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
there is a connection, and some people got deep in the occult, and they got harassed by the men in black. You just like, when you tap into certain powers and certain strains of knowledge, you draw attention to yourself. And maybe some of us were always, subject of this attention. With two men in my life in particular, I was being followed. We were being followed. One of them was aware of it. But it just seems to be of interest when particular souls are involved. And I know that these two are interesting to the Andromedans, that they want them just as they want me. They were trying to use me to get through to them, to recruit them essentially. It didn't happen. I don't think it will ever happen. They kind of stopped talking to me, the Andromedans, because their interest in me was always, they just wanted to do their stuff. It's a wild world out there. Like, compared to what I live stream about, that's like my safe space where everything makes sense and I know what I'm doing. This stuff, that's outer space, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for the end of this interview, because we covered a lot of things, KGB, MK Ultra, aliens, UFOs, Noira, do you have any method for contacting those aliens or UFOs?
I recommend against it. They are extremely political. They lie. They are only in on it for themselves. The ones who are likely to talk to you always have an agenda. The better ones who could help you are not likely to be intervening in the matters of this earth. So I personally would decline the contact if I were you. I would not seek it out.
So I will,
Is that okay or not?
because look, I have something to say, excuse me. So, and I think it kind of connects, and this is something relatively new. I kind of saved for the interview. So recently I did investigations in the Hindu underworlds, and what became pretty clear is that there was a race which is not exactly spiritual in those underworlds, and they call them the Nagas.
Yes.
The Nagas of Patala, or the evil Nagas. So those are essentially a really dark reptilian beings.
Yes.
But they don't have the attributes of spirits at all. It's almost like you're communicating with an alien race. And their descriptions are pretty similar to descriptions of reptilians in the New Age lore.
Yes.
And essentially, what they do is, we say a lot of times that demons feed of us or dark spirits feed, but no, those Nagas are actually the spirits who will literally kill you. Like, they literally chip the parts of you away. And once they do that, in return, you kind of get what you want. I personally asked for a method to reach the dark enlightenment experience, and they told me that the way to reach that experience is to surrender to one of them. So essentially what it means is that you relinquish the authority over your body, you let one of them to inhabit you and to be you, and in return for that relinquishment you will get whatever you want. It's like an obliteration of the free will, basically, and of individual psyche. And that's what and they kind of have a physical technology involved also. They exactly fit the description of what two of you have seen, just like a different variation of it. Because this thing is not spiritual, it's not astral, it's actually physical. The only difference is you don't kind of want to see it, or whatever that is doesn't want to be seen by you, but it's not spiritual in a way as Azazel is. It's more like
Well, I would
something
disagree
like
to say that Azazel is spiritual. I have encountered Lucifer so many times in very manifest forms.
yeah, but you know what I mean. Like those aliens are not
Well,
necessarily
yeah, the
spirit.
aircrafts are obviously quite material when you see
Yeah.
it.
So I was going to ask you, Nora, so having communicated with the aliens before, I was curious if you had an experience, anything like this. So when these have spoken to me, they speak in a way that makes sense logically, but the syntax is
Oh my God, the
used.
syntax is totally off, and it doesn't matter if
Yes,
you're using my language or my second
yes,
language. The
yes,
syntax is off, and sometimes they look for words to express a certain concept that actually doesn't exist in my
yes,
languages,
yes.
the
You really
languages
have
that
to
I
think
know.
about it. Like it
So,
takes several.
they
Yeah,
show me imagery or like an emotion, and then I just type in brackets and I describe the emotion or the imagery. It's the same for me.
yes, yes. Like it takes because it's so alien. The syntax it takes me like 30 seconds to figure to kind of process what they said to me, and it's hard for me to remember what they said too because it just is it's in such an unusual order.
We have developed a workable relationship, even though they don't really talk to me much anymore. I would be typing. I started with automatic
Yeah,
writing, but the writing would be way too slow. So they
yeah,
just have me sit at the computer and I type, and I have lots of these. I have lots of these files.
really,
Yeah,
wow.
I taught myself, channeling, telepathy, automatic writing, all these skills, which I
Uh-huh.
guess make it more easy, more fluent. But it doesn't necessarily mean that communicating with them will bring you much benefit, because they
Right.
were here apparently for a mission.
Hmm.
And if I would deny them cooperation, they would turn kind of hostile or basically tell me that they will not help me.
Hmm.
And the really crazy thing is, it appears as if though I am in charge of the mission that is trying to get Nora on board. It's my future self from another timeline that is picking up all of my past life selves of power, trying to align them or integrate them.
Hmm.
I could tell you way more about past lives and my ability to work with that for another episode, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Dimitri, do you have anything to add to that?
So what I have to ask you that is fundamentally what I okay. So fundamentally what I kinda think, are you there?
Yeah.
So what I kinda think is that those aliens are separate class of beings than the spirits we work with, and it's like a completely different field. I don't necessarily think that we as magicians are fully qualified to investigate it. I think we need help of other experts from other fields, because we are definitely dealing with something which is different than evoking angels in the circle. So I
I
would
don't know
rather,
if there's experts in this field. I don't know about that. And if there are, where would you find them?
I don't know, regarding the subject of aliens, before the reptilians appeared to me, I was laughing at all of that. I was laughing at people who were chasing aliens. But since reptilians appeared, I'm kind of certain that there is truth to those stories. and that there is a lot to that is actually traceable and biologically real. So the only thing I could say on that matter is that pretty much I hate popularization of it because it made it ridiculous, but at the same time, we cannot deny that those phenomena are everywhere, and they are trying to gaslight the population, telling that those are simply spy balloons. But I have yet to see a spy balloon disappearing and appearing and running on the speed faster than the speed of light. If they really had those balloons, Russian Federation and China would be over in like 12 seconds already. Like you wouldn't have all of those crises if they had really that technology. What I really think is that it's definitely because like whenever I start working with the Zazel, this is also what I wanted to bring up. Shit starts coming to me about physical existence of the giants. And so there is only one thing I would say about the aliens before I go off this interview. So I was asking Shanyaza about what those aliens are. And so he was telling me, so you know that giants are genetically modified humans. And I was like, yes. So what would happen if somebody like me came to Earth and genetically modified all of the spirits of the elements? What kind of being would that be? And then I looked and I said, exactly, whatever those aliens are, they are semi-spirit, semi-material. And the only race of beings which is capable of doing that are kinda elementals. And the way we describe aliens is pretty similar how people described Fae back in the day.
Yes.
So it seems that those aliens are technically the modified version of whatever the Fae are. But that's kind of result of my conversation with Shanyaza and also my own theory. So I don't know how much you will agree with that, but that's simply something I came across.
Very fascinating. I will not go on to deny any of your gnosis. I have not. It would never occur to me to ask these questions. You are a true seeker of knowledge. It's apparent from the kinds of questions that you ask spirits.
But honestly, I am not interested in you confirming, because I would like to hear your honest opinion about everything. Because I don't, I if I am wrong, that's okay. I am okay with being wrong as long as
Trust their gnosis. Trust their gnosis. I think they are answering you in the best way that they can answer you, considering your cultural conditioning, because we are all raised with a certain language, with certain concepts, with what is real and what is not real, and we have to look for the words and for the concepts to even describe what we're experiencing, and that's where the arduous task is, and not everything easily yields to even being described by words.
Yeah, but this kind of breaks, because here is the thing. If you can genetically modify the Fae, look, what breaks my mind about this is this. So if you can genetically modify the Fae, it means that the Fae have DNA. And just think about it.
Oh, they do. There is something like the Fae blood. It was always spoken about in myth and legend. The Fae blood is very real.
Yeah, but I don't understand. It really breaks my brain.
I know.
How on earth? Because here is the thing. In order to have a kid, right? In order for Fae blood to be an actual thing, there are two options. There is option A, in which the Fae is possessing the witch and which gives birth to a kid. But that's not exactly what they are referring to. If they are actually correct, if you take it literally means that Fae went 3D, right? And then somebody banged the Fae while the Fae went 3D, and that 3D Fae gave birth to a kid and then fucking disappeared.
Yes.
How the fuck? I mean, it breaks my mind.
Yeah.
My mind starts glitching whenever those concepts are introduced. But they told me that the aliens are the same thing, and I am how the fuck it's working? It doesn't make any goddamn sense. I am tripping fucking balls. I need medication.
Well,
Whenever
I have such funny memories too. Like I saw Belial in a spaceport on a different planet, like in charge of that spaceport, like as if he was kind of like a normal being. I saw Raziel as a member of the Council of Orion. So, like, what we call demons and angels is not necessarily, just it's not the medieval worldview. That's what the aliens told me, actually. They said, you did communicate with us in a past life, but back then you just did not understand because your conception of the world had you assume that we have to be angels. That was the only way how you could even, conceive of us.
Paimon in particular has told me that he has a particular fascination with space and NASA and spaceships and all that. Like he's really excited by that.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so guys, like my battery is running out, but this was really good interview, especially at the end. And it kind of
After you
reminds me,
wanted it.
well, like I listened to everything, but like the thing is like you really remind me, chicks, that I really have so much to learn. Like, my brain started to glitch when I reminded myself of my aliens experiment. Like, the reason why I never mentioned it is because whenever I start thinking about it, my mind would start to glitch because I couldn't comprehend what I was getting. This cannot be true. I am fucking insane, right? So,
I
so
know
yeah,
that feeling. But let's face it, Dimitri loves knowledge. He will go to any place to retrieve it, even at the cost of insanity or his own life.
yeah. Danny kind of knows that you are